Hello, this is Pixel Freak, and we are doing part 21 of the Final Fantasy Dimensions walkthrough. So we're going to Yggdrasil on this particular piece. We've just picked up Titan as a summon. I don't actually use him, which is unfortunate, I guess, but yeah, so be it. So there's a little bit of a, I don't know, pseudo-secret here. Gramps kind of has his memory kind of go wonky, and then you have to step on that little colored spot there, and boom, it opens up. So this particular dungeon, I've cut out quite a bit of the fights, and the reason for that is because this is a massive dungeon. It's actually bigger than any of the areas that you've gone to before. It's probably twice as big. So it's kind of like it's two put together, actually. So what I've done here is I left a few of the fights in early on, but it's still like a half an hour long video, even with most of the fights cut out. I've actually edited this pretty heavily as well to make it look like it's as direct as possible, because even going through this, having gone through it once before I recorded this, it was still, I still got lost a little bit, So bear with me as we kind of go through this. Another thing to add, I guess, with this piece of the walkthrough is that really there aren't that many enemies here that would cause any problems, especially if you've gone through and picked up Titan. Not using him, I'm still actually really powerful, and that's because you level up an additional amount just to get through that dungeon. So you should be pretty beefy by now. You should probably walk through this dungeon okay. There are some mini bosses as you go through, and they'll be introduced here pretty soon. But it's nothing you can't handle. It's a pretty simple dungeon until the boss. The boss of this dungeon is he's pretty burly. I'd say he's the toughest thing that you've gone to so far, and that's relative to what level you're supposed to be. I'd say that I felt like I was over leveled here, and then when I got to the boss, it was still a little bit difficult, so he's interesting. I guess I should probably mention early on in this video too, I'm pretty sure that the boss of this dungeon, he's a status ailment enemy. So you should be careful about, I think he does cast, I think it's blind. I may be proven wrong. You'll have to fast forward to the end of the video, check out what he's casting. If you're planning on going into this dungeon, make sure that you're well prepared. My approach when fighting him was to just go full force. I just threw everything I had at him, and a lot of my status ailments, I was kind of like, well, whatever, status be damned, I'm just going to take him out. I felt it was better to go that way because he hits really hard at the same time. So, but I guess, we'll get to that once it comes up. So one of the negative parts I had going through this is it changes halfway through, and right now we're kind of in this cave, right, and the enemies are one set, but pretty soon I start editing out all the enemies, and when the dungeon changes, I end up on the tree. It has a whole new set of enemies at that point, and I don't know how many of the fights I kept in there. However, I don't think that you should have a problem with any of those fights. If you're having problems with any of those particular enemies, just leave me a line in the comments, and I will quickly respond. I usually respond to good questions. I usually respond pretty quickly, and I should say good questions as determined by me. A lot of times when I get questions that are just been asked so many times that you could easily find it in the comments, I won't answer. Just because, across all my videos, I get quite a few comments, and so I can't keep up on them all the time, but I try to as best I can and as quickly as I can as well. Yeah, And since this video's had so much editing done to it, you'll see lots of spots where the kind of like right there. There was one just right there, a hard cut. I've been slicing and dicing this video up. I'm watching it now as I'm commenting on it. But if you find a spot and they're like, hey, this didn't make sense here, you went the wrong way, or you went down one path and all of a sudden you warped somewhere else, that's because this has been so sliced and diced up that I might miss a spot and think I edited it correctly when I didn't. Make sure you save here, because that little guy in a green cloak, he is a mini boss. The first of a few. But yeah, leave me a comment on that too, and I'll get that in my email and I'll respond immediately. Or near immediately, I should say. Alright, so there's a series of these guys as you traverse through Yggdrasil, these green keepers, and they're all the same. They all attack the same, at least from what I saw, they attack the same. They do progressively get more difficult, I'm pretty sure, where they heal themselves a little bit better and then they hurt you a little bit more. But for the most part, they're really just not a big deal. Just make sure you cast Fira on him and make sure that you attack. And he does counterattack with Osmos. So if your magic pool is a problem, make sure to go back to any save spots right away so that you can get that mana back. Come with a lot of tents. When he casts haste on himself, don't worry about it. Don't try casting slow. I would, just hit him with more spells. They don't have a whole lot of HP. So rather than trying to counteract any positive status effect they're putting on themselves, just nuke them. Just kill them. It's a much better approach. If you are worried about the enemy casting Osmos on himself or on you, don't cast Fira. It's going to be a longer fight overall. You're probably going to end up burning more mana than that in cures than you would if you just let him Osmos your black mage a couple times, but so be it. So here's where the enemies start to switch. Now we have the furry animals from the forest and spiders. Black widows. So it's interesting. I'm up in Seattle. That's where I live, or very, very near to Seattle. Enough that my 9 to 5 is in Seattle. But I was doing some renovations to my house, and swear to God that I found a black widow. And to me, that's crazy, because up here we don't have black widows. That's messed up. It turned out that it was actually, they're false black widows, because black widows aren't up here. Like, it would be a really weird thing for us to have black widows. Yeah, so when I found them, they ended up being not real black widows, but scary enough. I guess I was telling a guy at work, and he was from Arizona, and he was all like, yeah, so you're a wiener. Made me feel very manly. And that's my Black Widow story, so there it is. That's the kind of Final Fantasy Dimensions commentary that you get. So you can see there's the next sub-boss there. You'll double back to him. If you notice, I skipped that first little cave there and then went over to these two because these are where the treasure boxes are, and then you double back to that other one. There's also a door here, and I'm not sure if I walk over to it or not, right there. That will lead you outside if you want to go that way. It'll lead you back to the area where you weren't able to, it's to the town, but it's where they wouldn't let you by. They're like, no, you're humans, you can't go to Yggdrasil. That is the door out there. So you can walk back out there, go to the inn. I'd actually kind of recommend that. I did that in this video, but I cut it out because it was bad for the continuity of the video. So yeah, highly recommend that. Go out, save your game there, and go to the inn there, and then come back in. You may even want to do that after you fight this sub-boss if your mana pool is not full. However you approach the game. If you like to live dangerously, then you can continue going with half mana pool. So I'm kind of interested here. I'm still showing fights. So apparently you do see the majority of the enemies that are in Yggdrasil. So here you go. The last Greenkeeper healed himself for about 150. This one heals himself for about 280. So they are getting a little bit more powerful as you go. It looks like he isn't hitting me any harder. He's definitely taking damage at the same pace. About the same pace. Yeah, same pace. So again, same basic tactics. He just heals himself a little bit better, it looks like. I'm not sure if I was using Cure or Cura there for my auto heals. I would recommend Cure because they just don't hit hard enough to warrant Cura. That was quite a big edit there. I warped very quickly. So in looking through this dungeon, I didn't find a lot of secrets here. I mean, there are a lot of treasure boxes here, and there's actually some decent items. There's an elixir in here in one place. But there's not a lot of secrets, at least that I found. And again, if I do miss something and someone's like, hey, you missed that, if you would have just went left there, leave that in the comments as well, because I'm always willing to go back and annotate my videos to make them better. This is funny. This is an interesting kind of mechanic, or interesting. They've done this twice now, where one of the characters says something that you don't see what they see, and so it kind of seems like, wait, what the hell are they doing? Like, I think it was Alba just there. It might have been Diane that said, "Come out like a good boy." And it's like, wait a minute, are you talking to one of the guys in your party, or? Anyways, this is the king's son here, and to explain what the dialogue is saying, he's worried about his dad. His dad's up higher up on the tree, and he wants you to go and help him because he just hasn't quite been himself. Very much like the King of Baron in Final Fantasy IV, and we saw how that worked out. I think it's going to work out similarly in this game. That's called foreshadowing. So a lot of people have asked me about this game, saying, wondering, is this game really worth $20? And usually when people ask me that question, I respond with another question, and that's, how much would you pay if you wanted to go back and play Final Fantasy IV again for the first time? Because I feel like this story is very similar to that story. And I'm holding my ground on that too now. And when I think back to when I went through Final Fantasy IV, I remember I didn't have a very big attachment to the characters, but I did have an attachment to the story. I liked how the story progressed, and I was interested to see how things were unfolding, but I really wasn't that attached, as I previously mentioned. It wasn't until probably maybe Final Fantasy VI a little bit, but even more so, Final Fantasy VII was really when I started to become attached to characters. I think that they had a next level ability to tell stories. Like the whole thing with Aerith, like, of course, like it blew so many other people's minds, it blew my mind. They worked so hard to make you get so attached to her that it was a great story mechanic. I kind of feel like this game though is like Final Fantasy IV in that I'm not particularly attached to any of these characters. I mean, I really like Noct and I really like Soul. They seem to be both good kind of leading characters. And I've liked the extra characters. I like Barbara so far, and I've liked Gramps here. They've both been good characters. But the rest of them, to me, seem very generic. There's not a whole lot going on with them. I don't see a lot of. They're not likable in any sense. However, the story though, I'm into the story. I've enjoyed the game thus far. I'm a little ways farther than this now. I've actually kind of caught up to myself a little bit in the walkthrough now. I'm not too much farther in the game actually than right here. So that's a good item to have for this boss, considering all the status ailments. However, if you cannot use remedies, remedies are always really good to hold on to until later in the game. Of course, you'll probably have some equivalent of ribbon later in the game, but usually there's a boss or two towards the end of Final Fantasy games that they just barrage you with different status ailments, and having a nice stockpile of remedies, because in some games you can't buy them. I'm not sure about this one if you can or can't, but in the games that you can't buy them, it's always nice to have that stockpile from the whole game. So that was the elixir back there. Yeah, of course you saw it. Definitely don't want to miss out on that item. There are going to be a limited amount of elixirs in the game. Probably worth grabbing those 2 boxes as well. I always thought in Final Fantasy games, I always disliked it, I should say, how expensive they make their MP healing items, like in Final Fantasy VI, the tincture and the ethers in this game, and they're always so expensive. Like it seems to me that it would be a little bit cheaper. Like it's so expensive that I never buy them. Like it's just a waste of my money. I might as well be buying equipment. That's way more important than a few ethers. I might as well just make extra trips to the inn. So at this point, we're actually getting kind of close to the boss now. It would be a good idea to kind of get your affairs in order with your characters. Make sure that you're the right jobs, that you have everything set up the way you would want it set up. I think I just crawled down here from this area that I'm in, and then it's a little bit east, and then straight up. Straight up. So yeah, it's not too much farther from here is the boss. Oh, there's a little bit more up. No, there. I was going the right way. Yeah, so the boss is actually right up here, just off and to the straight up. Just so you don't miss it though, there's a save spot here to the right there where that cave is. And if you don't want to trigger the story sequence right away, you can actually kind of hug the right side and then go into that cave before this story sequence, but nothing happens here. There's no boss here right away. You have a little bit of dialogue here, some stuff happens, and then you'll have to go farther north to trigger the boss fight. So there's a save spot here to the right, and then there's an item or maybe 2 off to the left. You want to grab those as well. I guess it would make more sense to go left first, grab the items, and then go right, but I do the opposite, and then I go to the boss. Alright, so make sure you tint it up here. Get your magic points in order and get ready for that boss. Oh, so it's just one item, just one ether. Good to have, though, nonetheless. Oh, whoops. Alright, so once you're ready, come up here, and I think I go right and then I go left to see if there's any items, just to double check. There aren't, and you might as well just trigger the boss fight. Any last preparation? And here you go. So who didn't see that coming, right? One thing that I really like that they're doing in this game is that it appears as though they're kind of doing the four fiends of the elements. It's kind of a throwback. The original Final Fantasy had four fiends, and in this game they have these like four elemental. They're not really elemental though; they're just like four generals. And I think it's kind of interesting how they have four warriors on one side and four warriors on the other side, and they have these four generals. And it's kind of almost like they were trying to allude to some kind of a throwback to the original Final Fantasy, but they didn't want to go so much as to, you know, saying, oh, there's four crystals and there's four warriors, and they didn't want to throw it back that hard. They did a pretty hard throwback on, what was the name of that? I think it was the Four Heroes of Light. It was a DS game, and it was not, that game was not very critically acclaimed. A lot of people didn't like it, and I bought it, and I have played the first few hours, but I never beat that one, unfortunately. On the DS, I beat Final Fantasy 4 and 3, and then I did play one of the other spin-offs that was Revenant Wings. I went through that whole game as well. But there was another Final Fantasy that I owned there for the DS that I didn't play either. Tactics Advanced 2. I never beat that game either. One of these days, maybe I'll get back to it. Or maybe one of these days they'll port it to Android and I'll play them here. Alright, so the first time you run into this guy, he has this miasma, I think is what he... Yeah, there you go, miasma. Miasma is impenetrable. Don't do what I do here. I waste magic, and I waste, more importantly, Glaive. I waste his magic. And then I think I even waste a eye drop here. Just accept the fact you're not going to win this fight. You have to go down. You gotta go down hard. And just like that, oh, status ailments. Yeah, see, then this is something that he does later on. This doesn't end. He casts a lot of this stuff on you, even later when you fight him for reasons. Oh, yeah, pretty much. You go down faster than Paris Hilton in that fight. Just done. son of a bitch. Can't you see I'm glowing here? You little bastard. You don't ever touch a man when he's glowing. That's just messed up. So it's really interesting here, the kind of back and forth that happens. It starts with the kid, and it's like, oh, you shouldn't do that. And so, like, the kid body slams that guy, right? And then it's all like, hey, here comes Gramps, all energized up. And then he takes a shot in the face. And what I love here is, like, the guy just keeps blowing, like, all this magic everywhere, and everybody just keeps getting in the way of it, but then keeps getting up. It's like, oh, man. First he takes a shot in the face, and then he gets up again, and he's like, hey, could you give me another one? Perv or not. God, I love Alba's dialogue. So I do have to admit, as much as I was saying previously that I'm not attached to any of the characters, I'm attached to Alba. She has a personality, and that's great. A personality that you just don't see in Final Fantasy games. Alright, so Gramps is going one-on-one with Asmodai. And if I remember correctly, you might as well not waste your breath here, because there's nothing really you can do. Just do fight. There's no sense in wasting effort selecting a bunch of stuff. It's not going to do anything. This is a fight that's preordained, what the outcome is going to be. I love that he shoots an arrow. He shoots an arrow and it like knocks that guy's little shield off, but then it's got like blowback. It's an arrow. It shouldn't have blowback. There's no blowback for arrows. So here he is, still hitting you with all kinds of different attacks, only this time they don't stick nearly as much. I'm not sure what cures the paralyzed status that Glaive has right now. I don't know if anything does. He does wear off relatively quickly though, so after about 2 or 3 turns he's back in action. And he'll blink a little bit before that happens. For the most part, I just continue to chain your level 3 black magic spells and your Cura, and then heal any status ailments that would otherwise impede you from attacking. So if you've got something for paralyze, use that, but I don't think you can. I don't think you can heal paralyze. If you get blind on one of your fighters, fix that. If you get silence on one of your casters, fix that. Otherwise, I wouldn't fix it. So there's the kind of blinking status ailment I was talking about. He casts slow on everybody pretty consistently as well. Unfortunately, your white mage is going to need to be curing full time, so if you get a status element and you need to cure it, don't use your white mage, unless your white mage has silence, in which case, get that shit off your white mage. Aside from that, you should use your fighters to cure any status ailments with items, because your white mage needs to be healing constantly. Your black mage can also heal if you want him to. I tend to not use healing items using my black mage just because their damage output is so high. I want black mages to continue doing that damage output. You may actually want to take the time to give a hit to anybody that gets confused on them. Just because if one of your, especially if one of your melee characters gets confused, put on him, he can do some damage to your casters really quickly, turn the tide of the battle. So you might want to give him a slap with your Black Mage especially. So the battle does go on until you are just about tapped out. You're going to be near dead by the time you get him dead. And his attacks do get stronger and more frequent as he gets closer to death. Ooh. So there you go. I pulled a win out when I wasn't looking so hot for my team. But I left the poison on just because poison it doesn't do that much damage to you while you're in battle. Poison's more dangerous when you leave it on and you're walking around with it on, because then you'll forget about it. And I mean, even though it's ticking at you, I've left it on before and just for some reason not seen it. Then gone into a fight with 1 HP. So poison, it's not horrible in this game in the battle. So there you go. Now you have the Ranger class. Alright, so that's pretty much the end of this particular piece of the walkthrough. The chapter just ends for this team, and we go back to Seoul for the next piece of the walkthrough. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel. This is Pixel Freak, and I'll see you on the next piece of the walkthrough.